Hello, Martin from Gemini Walk and Talk here. This time driving though, and we are in downtown Portland and in the perimeter kind of around downtown. And this city had a lot of problems for the last 5 to 10 years. And we're here to see how it is right now in 2024, almost 2025. And we're just going to film from the car facing forward, and I'm going to comment on what we're seeing. Okay, so we're kind of in the northwestern district here, and we're going to loop back towards downtown. Northwest is nice because that's really where most of the nightlife and socializing happens. It's actually nice. I like this part of Portland the most, and kind of wish we had it in Seattle if we can just transport this part. But anyway, we have come here in 2020 or 2021, and the situation was indeed bad. Like I can link the video which we made back then. We did the same thing from our car, and sometimes we got out, but honestly it was a little scary back then. And now we don't really know what to expect, but from a glance right now, possibly because it's Black Friday, it's a holiday, it's not that busy at all. There's not much going on truly. So we'll drive around and see if any part of the city is more populated. But one thing is very visible already, that it is much cleaner. I don't know what this train is doing. We have these massive streetcars here in Portland apparently, which just camp out in front of stuff. Can I turn here? Yes. Alright, so we are heading back south towards downtown Portland. And down there on my left is the Union Station. For reference, this is where you arrive by train from Seattle or even California if you want to take a long ride. And these areas for sure were some of the most plagued by homelessness, drug abuse and crime previously. At the moment I cannot see any of that, to be honest. Like I'm seeing clean streets, actually looks quite normal, and it's a far cry from what was before. Though we drove into Portland and around Portland a bit to do other things, and we noticed that away from downtown there were still quite a lot of problems with all these things. So it's quite possible that there has been a sweep, and then they have been removed from downtown, but now they're in the periphery. And that would be an interesting thing, but the periphery would really be the residential, and you don't want residential neighborhoods to have these problems either. It is indeed good that they have cleaned up downtown, if that is so. For now, that is the picture we're getting. We had a dinner with some friends, and they were saying they basically left the city, all of Portland, because there was too much crime, and they had young children recently, and some incidents happened that just made them leave way out in the suburbs. Not sure if people are sticking around here to raise children. I do see quite a bit of just young people, maybe single people or just couples, but I have not seen any child yet since we arrived in downtown Portland, though again it is a holiday. Possibly people are hanging out in their houses outside the city, because this is actually a sprawling metropolis, and this is just a small part of it right here in the middle. Right here is one of the main parks in the whole city, and I do believe this park was entirely covered in tent and homelessness and riots before. Right now there's not a single one that we can see. I do see some people lighting a fire in there. I don't know what's their story, but that's the only thing we just saw. I think towards this area here is the so-called Pearl District and Broadway, and then Chinatown. I'm gonna turn here on Broadway since I'm already in such a lane and see where it takes us. Yeah, so far completely clean. What can I tell you? They've done a pretty good job, I guess, sweeping it. The question is where it went after it got swept. In the case of Seattle, rather similar. There were many tents and crime scenes, but they mostly concentrated them. They swept them into like 3 main areas in the city, and now, as of this weekend or something in Seattle, they're designating those areas as like, I don't know what they're even calling them. They're saying in these areas where all the drugs and the crime are now drug and crime free or something, drug free or whatever, prostitution free even. And now they're gonna try to target those areas in particular to crack down on the crime. But would that not spread the crime again to the other areas? I don't know. You want all the crime to be gone, truly, if you're a citizen of those places. And so it makes you wonder here in Portland. But I'm just impressed that I see nothing at the moment like what we saw before. And I can play some clips from the last video we took around here. I think we were even on this block right here. And there were many, many tents we walked by when we went to get some coffee right around the corner here. On the left here we are seeing one of the many strip clubs of Portland. Before Portland became known for crime and drugs, it was known for strip clubs. And they serve you steak in the strip club, which I don't know who wants to eat steak in a strip club. Like, to me that's kind of gross. Yeah, here we're starting to see some problems on the right side. I guess it's not entirely clean, and it's probably again localized, so we're just doing a pass without knowing truly. If you were someone to come out of town and just randomly enter places without knowing anything, you would have this experience that we're having right now. So all in all, it's better than before already, though we did hear plenty of crimes. Like that family told us, it's not even necessarily crime, but just behavior which makes you very, very nervous about your safety. Apparently is very common. And if I was honestly out here filming, I would be nervous.
That's the reason why you're not walking.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't want to walk around here with the camera out, and just for my own safety. I'm a father and a husband, so I don't want to be knifed or something like that for no good reason. And in Seattle, actually, those areas where the crime is, they are very hostile to cameras because they're committing crimes, and they turn pretty actually violent and angry about it. So we shall see from the car instead of walking around. I do normally do the walk and talk, but there's a safety concern here. We're going over the bridge over the river. Tents on the right side here, people living right there. So there's still quite a lot of homelessness. Not a pretty sight, to be honest, on this bridge. So perhaps these people have been driven away from points of interest and commerce, but part of the thing is a lot of businesses already left downtown because of these problems. And for example, REI, a big outdoor gear store, left downtown Portland, and so did many smaller ones and others. So there's been lots of business, lots of economic activity, and altogether just a bad situation here. From what I'm seeing, there's improvement, but it's not too much improvement, truly. You still see it around to the point where it makes you uncomfortable and kind of concerned for your safety. Previously, we had to leave the car parked and with a lot of baggage, and I wasn't sure that's the best idea on the streets of Portland, because a lot of these people are desperate, and who knows what they do. You hear about carjackings all the time in all the West Coast cities. And when you're on a road trip, that's the last thing you want. And then you're with your young children, so truly probably we shouldn't even be here. But yeah, see people burning stuff on the bus stop there. Yeah, lighting a cigarette with a burning pizza box or something like that. Some sort of a cyberpunk apocalypse, whatever, dystopia site over there. This, I think, is the Burnside Road street, and it's one of the main ones that goes across town. So now we're on the east side of Portland, which stretches for a very long time. Right here it looks fine actually on this main road, though I don't know what happens if we stray. But it looks a lot more normal, but still not fully recovered. A lot of already other graffiti and stuff like that, but it honestly has been in a much worse shape before. It was kind of like a no-go zone state before, and I wouldn't call it that anymore, but you still have to be quite kind of not exactly savvy, because we don't even know what we're doing here, but you have to be watching your back and make sure you don't become a target, I think, in this kind of environment. At least that's the feeling I get. I get the feeling that I'm not entirely safe here, even though I'm not necessarily in immediate danger either. So I'm gonna turn here and loop back towards downtown. Oh yes, good. Right here is more so the neighborhoods, and we saw some problems in some of these more residential areas, but this is an example of where people would actually live. And I am seeing stuff like piles of trash on the sidewalk and stuff, but yet to see any major problems. Yeah, so a little bit of residential driving just to see what it's like. It seems rather calm and cozy. It's Portland, which actually historically has very nice homes. There are craftsman and Victorian homes in these neighborhoods. And Portland, despite the issues that I've been talking about, is actually quite expensive of a city. And the issue is that it does not actually have that many good employers. And as a result, it has among the lowest affordability in the USA. I don't exactly know what to attribute the high prices because of these problems, but I believe it's because it's the West Coast and the temperate climate here. So it is still a desirable environment from that point of view. However, in the city, there's not a good environment and not a good economy exactly, because compared to the Silicon Valley, Bay Area, and Seattle and Los Angeles, those are areas with a lot more employment, a lot more money, where you would understand why the prices are so high. Well, here it's kind of like the other place where, if you're not in all these other places I just mentioned, you may come to Portland. And part of the problem with Portland is not exactly coastal, actually it's inland. And so, yeah, it's kind of on the West Coast, but it's not exactly a coastal city. And because of that, it gets neglected in terms of economic development to some degree. And at least employers are not too much here. There's some other kind of phenomenon here where there are a lot of small businesses and communal stuff. And that's more so the mindset here. They don't have the big companies, so everybody's trying to start like a little small something and try to leverage the community to sustain the business. We just went to some kind of a crafts or whatever you call it, the Christmas bazaar or something like that. Lots of little boutique goods and handmade stuff and some foods, really, liqueurs and cocktail stuff. So people are making things, and all the time in Seattle we find products made in Portland, but nothing is like a large-scale employer, except there's Nike and Intel, but they're actually in Beaverton outside of the city. So when it comes to the actual city, I'm not sure exactly what people do for a living for the most part. It's kind of a mystery to me. Some friends we have met work in hospitals, for example, and there are hospitals everywhere, and those pay pretty well, but you can't all be doctors, right? And the doctors are here to serve everyone else. So it's an interesting place, actually. The cost of living has spiked despite the lack of jobs. And for example, for me as an immigrant or someone concerned with economics, I don't find this to be attractive for that reason, while certain people find it to be some kind of mecca, and they come congregate here for that reason. And there is an inflow into Portland, but I think in last year's net outflow, actually people left because of crime for the most part. And who knows exactly how things are turning. I do see a lot of improvement right here, actually. Like, we've been driving for a while now, and I don't see a disaster like we saw in 2020, 2021. We had a similar experience in San Francisco, by the way, and we also were there on a holiday or a rainy day or something like that, and the city looked nearly empty, but it did look cleaned up. The issue with San Francisco, for example, another West Coast city, is there's no development happening there whatsoever. They've basically outlawed building new construction. While here in Portland, they actually do develop, but here more so they lack capital. And in the case of Seattle, actually, there's both capital and permits to develop. So Seattle, I think, is seeing by far the most construction and growth out of those cities. Possibly LA, due to sheer size, is getting a lot, but compared to here, I think Seattle is kind of going 100 miles per hour. Here we have more just people living on the side in tarps and stuff like that. When you find like abandoned lot like that, and that's where they actually have gravitated more recently, it seems like. But another thing about Portland, kind of a paradox, like all the things I mentioned, economic issues and crime and homelessness issues, and yet there's like an extreme amount of restaurants and shops and stuff. So it's like on a small business level, like a little kind of single person, few people doing business, it looks to be thriving, while on the larger scale there's nearly nothing. And so it's an interesting place altogether. I guess someone must have known it and written or talked about these things who is more familiar how exactly it works, because to me when I come here and spend money, for example, the prices are high, they're not low by any means, and yet it's a one way, and yet if you look for jobs and things like that pay the kind of money which it requires to buy a house and to eat out and all these things here, you realize quickly that it's hard to find such jobs here. So how do people make it? I don't truly know. To me it's always been a mystery actually, how exactly people make it around here. Another thing is the city looks very dated. It kind of is like what Seattle used to be, and Seattle has redeveloped, like I mentioned. It was kind of like this older and dated and grungy, while it no longer is. Kind of this part of Seattle has practically this part of Seattle that looked like Portland has practically vanished, and a lot of people kind of nostalgically miss it. So for that reason they like Portland a lot, but they even move here. A lot of people have moved down here for the sake of nostalgia, because this place still looks like the 80s or the 90s. It's interesting, with some refreshment and some new things popping, but the overall look, for example, is different. You don't see the shiny new developments here all over the place like in Seattle. This area in particular is kind of semi-industrial despite being very central, and you see, for example, on the left there, a big village. To the point, I don't know if I should be going that way. Yeah, for example, here more so on the outskirts of downtown, you see the big villages like they were everywhere before. So some amount of cleaning up has happened, but it has more so scattered them instead of really, solving it for good, which who knows even how you do that. There's been a general inability to solve this problem on the west coast of the USA at least. So I don't know myself how it can be solved, to be honest with you, but the people in charge who are in charge of solving it have not either. And the problem basically gets kicked around. That's what happens. I'm sure a lot of people are already sick of it, and I know the people who are living this way, they don't want to live this way either, truly. But no one has fixed it, and no one knows how to fix it, evidently. So you have strange situation where all these are businesses and multi-million-dollar properties with just camps around them of homelessness. It, to me, honestly looks like a cyberpunk movie where society collapsed and then some people are living on the street stranded, while other people are still trying to live rather normal in between. Interesting place altogether, yeah. So yeah, truly we can do this all day, but I think we'll have the same conclusion. So I'm going to wrap up the video by saying there has been some sort of recovery. It's not a full recovery, but it's a big improvement, and yet it's still to the point where I don't feel safe here. So it's not a complete recovery, yeah, not that nice. There's a lot more work to be done, and I don't exactly know how they will do it, given the overall lack of resources and will to actually do this in Portland. Like, they have to change their ways, and change their mind about a lot of things for this to be solvable, honestly. They have to redevelop whole swaths of the city to be able to provide some sort of alternative. In Seattle, that's actually happening. Like, they're redeveloping wholesale there. Here, I'm not so sure. We're driving on the freeway now in Portland, and it has me thinking there's a very high number of bridges and ramps and freeways going through here. and they all look very, very dated, and some of them just look ready to fall apart. I know the freeway system of the USA was made in the 50s for the most part. Some of these bridges may even precede that. And when you look at all this here in this city, it really makes you wonder what about maintaining it, because when it was built, I think it was a federal effort, and I already know the taxes here are high and people are leaving due to taxes, businesses are leaving due to that. They are having hard time actually carrying out projects of this scale at this point. I don't know who's going to fund them, but right now we're going through these many ramps, and look at them peeling and just look old and not in a good shape. And there's so many of them. So how do you rebuild them at this point? I don't believe that this city has the money, the resources. I don't even know if it has the know-how at this point to do it. There was, for example, a project which I think was greenlit. It passed funding and stuff to connect. I think it's replacing a bridge over the Columbia River between Washington State and Oregon, which would connect the cities of Portland and Vancouver, Washington. And they have to, for years and years, talk about where they're going to find the funding. It's like some exorbitant sum, and in the end it was like this colossal feat against all odds to pass it. And that's just one out of so many bridges here that need to be redone. So, and you can read, for example, the books by Strong Towns, and he argues that America's infrastructure is straight up going to collapse because it cannot be funded. The funding model does not actually have upkeep in it, and when it fails, and there's no money to even keep it up, and let alone rebuild it. And in a city like this with so many rivers and bridges and ramps and things, that's gonna cripple that city because it's already congested. What happens when bridge after bridge starts failing in like a decade, 2, 3, 4? I don't know. This is quite the interesting question here when you drive around Portland.